So, Conor, great to have you with us here this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Back home, unfortunately, due to the lockdown. But from my point of view, the impact you had on Northern Irish schools football, on the association, on the cup competitions. I happen to be, new in at St. Columns, and the first season, it just totally revolutionised the whole competition. I remember there was the big radio bus at the side of the pitch, and everybody down at Ballymena Showgrounds. We were taking 4 or 5 coach loads to the finals. I think possibly of the first year was actually the treble season for our school. So obviously it's a very fond memories for myself and a number of players that are now playing, at a high standard, the likes of your Aaron McIneffs, your Michael Duffys, they came through that. Ben Doherty, Conor McDermott, Rory Holdens, all those boys, were part of that journey. And the knock-on effect for me was that, it made me want to really take my coaching more seriously and hopefully get the players to experience those cup finals over and over again. And, your journey has just spiraled in such a positive way from there. So we felt it would be great for coaches over here to hear about, the journey that you've been on, and actually the different roles that you've had, because it hasn't always been coaching roles. And I just know that it's going to be such an interesting story, and it will inspire other coaches, and they will then, hopefully aim for bigger and better things themselves. But first of all, we're obviously on lockdown. What are you up to?
Working from home a bit. Obviously, running a professional football club when there's no football on isn't as much to do. But this week's been very busy, to be fair, because we've given out the decisions on our under-18s who were to get a professional contract or not. So that was a lot of preparation, and then yesterday was basically 9 to 5 of Zoom calls. So I was mentally wrecked yesterday, because it's quite a tough thing to do. Obviously, you're crushing somebody's dreams effectively. Like, albeit, there's many other avenues to go, and Oldham Athletic mightn't be the right route for everybody. But you build a connection with them, and you want to see them do well. And I've been with them since February last year, so just a year and a bit. And I was the other coach. I'm head of coaching, but the PDP coach, the guy, so I assist him in that role, but I'm head of coaching. The guy Danny Cadamatri came in the summer, and missed most of pre-season, so I led pre-season as well. So quite a connection with the lads. So it was really tough and they took it well. Unfortunately, due to the COVID situation as well, it's gonna. My concern, really, to be honest, is they're going to be a club when we go back. I think some of them realise that as well. And football is probably going to change significantly, depending on how we can deal with this situation. Because if there's no supporters coming to games, especially a lower league, there ain't going to be a big TV contract like the Premier League. Interesting time. So that's probably a concern for my staff as well. But just trying to be positive, not think about it too much, because you don't know what the future holds, if you like. So, just keeping myself taken over, trying to plan do reviews, I say.
Yeah. And to go back then, you're talking about the youngsters there and decisions that are being made. To go back to the start of your journey, you were at Cookstown Youth. How did that come about, and what was the benefits of that?
It's going back to probably, must be around the year 2000, maybe no, a wee bit after, maybe around that time anyway. And I was playing for Cookstown Youth, I think, at the time, but I knew the guy who coached me quite a lot going through the different age groups there. He spoke to the chairman, who's a local businessman, and Cookstown Youth were thriving at the time. They had a partnership with Preston North End, and they were running a summer school. A guy who's a year above me in school did it the year before me, and the chairman asked me to do it that year, and it went really well. Didn't, like, from the outside, it went really well. Like, when I was at the time, I was going, oh shit, I haven't done this, I haven't done that, and going, does everybody know what they're doing? So it was like literally thrown in the deep end. organising, managing people who've been coaching for 20, 30 years. Like, you know, it was great experience, and we had big turnout. Actually, we won. Not that I did anything for it, like, but the chairman at the time, Johnny McKinstry, is a successful businessman. He opened Time for anybody who goes to Time nightclub in Cookstown. He's the man behind that originally. But they did a big marketing campaign and won. I remember going to dinner actually. We won, I think, Belfast Telegraph marketing campaign or something along those lines. So we went multilingual because Cookstown is quite diverse now with Portuguese and stuff. So it was a real interesting thing with big numbers. And as a thank you, Johnny used his contacts at guy Simon Davey, who had just left Preston to go and run Barnsley's academy. So I'd say he sent me over there for a week, and that was my first time really going and watching a top coach work. I had been like helping. Sorry, 2 years before that, I'd been helping as an assistant coach, and all the Preston North End coaches were over, and Simon was leading that. So I'd got a bit of a connection with him there. And then I spent a week with him at Barnsley and watched him work, and he was top class. He actually went on from Barnsley a couple of years later. They went to the FA Cup semi-final and that, and he was the first team manager. So I was watching a really, really top coach work, and enjoyed that, and I just sort of got the hunger and the thirst for it. And quite freakily enough, I hadn't spoken to Simon in probably more than 10 years, because he's moved to America. And I was in Florida working at a club in February, and I was walking along the pitch, and I was like, "Wonder is that?" And I was like, "Simon," and he's like, "Conor," and I was like, "Ah!" So he was coaching at Concord, a team in Atlanta, Georgia. And I couldn't believe it, like so random. I was working at Chargers Chargers at that point, Florida Chargers, and they were playing Concord. And I was like, "That is freaky." I hadn't seen him in probably 15 years. So football is a small world, and yeah, that was the start of it, really.
And what do you think it was about what you saw in his sessions that really helped spark you?
He was just class. He was different than anything I'd seen before. Like, I remember him doing a session. Like, I can still picture it now. The day at their training ground, it was beautiful, sunny day and all. And how he was doing. He started off with in basketball they do the 3-man weave. And so he started off, built that into a session, then built that in with crossing and finishing type practice, and then took it into a game, and then he gave the lads some time to do their own individual bits, and he went round and like so centre halves were doing some heading, strikers doing some finishing and stuff, and I just thought I hadn't seen anybody work like that before. Now all that type of stuff's the norm now, but this is going back 15 years anyway, at least. So it wasn't as and I wasn't obviously as experienced as I am now. So to see somebody work at that level, and like he was picking me up at the hotel, taking me to training, spending all day with him, just being around him, and yeah, he was class. Like, he really was.
So for the grassroots coaches that will be listening, obviously, you saw him doing these drills. Did you just go straight back home and copy them? Like nowadays, obviously, the tendency can be for some to go straight onto YouTube, see, nowadays we have access to anything, so you can see a Pep Guardiola drill and then go and replicate it. Was there, a little bit of that in there? Was there then some trial and error, and then you started to add your own stamp to those, or how did it go on the back of that?
See, to be fair, I wrote down, I'd love to find a notebook actually, but I wrote down everything he did that week. And yeah, at that point I was copying. It was like just try and see and do, see what he can do, and then try and do it myself. And then he used bits of his session to build into bits of mine. And I just wanted to see the first bit. I remember just thinking, I wonder, could I deliver that? I knew I wasn't going to be able to deliver it as well, but could I get across some of the details and messages and stuff? So there was definitely the initial copycat sort of thing, but all best coaches are thieves, and then I just started to build stuff. I remember doing SAQ was very popular at that point, and he did something with ladders and stuff, and I thought, oh, that's pretty good. And then I remember taking the Cookstown youth under, I think it was under 16s at that point, and doing this wee session that built into a game and a bit of finishing and stuff, and the lads loved it, and I was like, oh, okay. So then I got me thinking, I wonder what else I could do. So he was very, very influential at that point.
And then, that spiraled on. You got the chance then at UUJ, a very successful spell. Tell us more about, I suppose you'd learned from your Cookstown to bring into UUJ. Tell us a bit more about that.
Well, on the back of another sort of spin-off from Cookstown Youth was I started getting involved in the County Excellence Programme. So I went in initially and volunteered. Paul Key was the Patrone head coach, so a friend of mine from school knew Paul because he had coached him. He was quite a good player. He was going to sign for Leeds, and then it fell through the last minute. So he went up and said he was going to volunteer just to learn. So I did that as well. So I did that sort of my first year uni, and then I played first year uni for the university team. Then second year I took the first year team. So I was getting a wee bit more coaching experience, and I thought, well, why not try? I'm only a year older than these ones, but I'll give it a go. So yeah, I took the university team. We won the league, won the All Ireland, and for the first time in 29 years, actually, second time ever. I still got that one on my CV. Never care, but I was proud of that. And yeah, so it was just more coaching with older ones, and like it was pretty much coaching my peers. Like I'd played in the first year, the freshers team the year before, and then to take it the year after was probably a bit more of a confidence thing to go in around that, because it's like generally when you're coming through coaching, you'll start with mini soccer and then you'll maybe work into youth teams, and so that was basically adult football for the first time. So it was a real good learning experience. Some decent players, to be fair. Obviously, we wouldn't have won it without good players. Yeah, it was more the managing people, I think, was a big thing there, and making sure they kept coming to practice, because you train Monday, played Wednesday, so it was, and students are like, I wanted to be out partying as well, so tried to have a bit of team bonding, and when we won the trophy, we had a very good time. I'll tell a story in the outtakes of this about that. If anybody from that team's watching, actually, we'll just say Dublin, the airport, and we'll leave it at that.
But with you being just slightly older than the players, and you talk there about, building relationships with them and kind of man management of players. At that point, what had influenced you to try and do those things rather than just solely focusing on, we have to train this way? Is that obviously already you were starting to think about the players and your approach to players. What brought that kind of thinking about with you?
Whenever I did my first coaching badge at 16, and at that point I was like wanting to be a PE teacher, and that was, well, obviously I wanted to be a footballer, but that wasn't going to happen. So I wanted to be a PE teacher. So that sort of got me in the line of teaching and thinking about football. And then as I progressed, I sort of thought, I like working with the better players more. And then I thought I couldn't do the teaching thing. And then I kept just getting management roles, like that one Cookstown Youth threw me into very, very young to be managing people who've coached like a were older than me. They were coaching me when like a year previously, and then I was telling them what to do. So I guess just managing people has always been a thing I've been doing. Like I did, I used to go to the BB and I did the Queen's badge, and I was just thinking about this the other day. Like I've been very lucky in terms of the amount of development I've got on like leadership and communication and things, because you do all these. I love that, going through the Queen's badge process. It was residentials and learning how to lead people and stuff, and how to manage. So I think just other things outside of with football and outside of football really developed those skills, and then I just became the norm for me, and has been for quite a while, I guess.
And then the Milk Cup role came on the back of that. So give us a bit more of a story about, how did that come up? Because again, there'll be coaches that are aspiring towards those types of roles and working with those types of players. For you, how did that happen?
Yeah, so I said there, Paul Key was the County Excellence coach at the time. So we had a really good setup. I'm going with the Tyrone thing. Paul was fantastic and is a fantastic coach. And he basically started mentoring me, which was great. I started off volunteering with him, then became an assistant coach, and then a paid coach, and then just progressed through his setup. And like, all the people who were involved are all doing really good things. Jared Boyle and Eamon Curry, and Stevie Clark, he's now vice principal at school in Dergview, but he was coaching at Dergview and stuff. Everybody who's come under Paul at that time has went on and done really well for themselves in their own field. So the Milk Cup came on the back of Paul being the Tyrone head coach. So he applied to be the because we were taking them 12 to under 15, and then you would finish at April. And as though it was his full-time job, he got approval from the IFA to apply for it to be able to keep the lads to get the next 3 months of training with them and games. So basically the staff that were working in the County Excellence Programme continued with that, and again it progressed from being an assistant coach to eventually leading, and being the manager of different age groups for at least a couple of years anyway, probably more. So yeah, it's a great week. Like again, we were talking before about under 18s. Like socially, it was such a great, like Eamon Curry. My God, that boy's funny, isn't he? Like he was a goalkeeping coach, and me and him were having some crack with the lads. One-liners, games and stuff, and just such fun memories. We played some great teams. Like I remember playing Chivas Guadalajara in the first day. And I figured out after a while that one whistle meant right and two whistles meant left. But like they were pinging these diags, and I was like, "Who's that to?" And next thing, this guy would just roll back. And I was like, "Oh shoot," So some of the teams we played were such a high level compared to anything we'd ever played before, and that was a real good challenge. It was, you were trying to be competitive at that. And for Tyrone as well, we always did well. Like. And we shouldn't, because we're one of the smaller populated counties, So yeah, it was great experience, and worked again with some good people. Lots of good people. Sorry, committee people, great crack as well, and do a lot of good work. And it's real fun memories of the Milk Cup, and hopefully I'll go back someday and take a team and Super Cup NI now. Sorry, branding purposes. But no, it'll always be the Milk Cup for me. Really enjoyable experience, and developed me personally. Give me a bit of a platform as well, to be fair, because there was a bit of press around it. Because I think I was probably one of the youngest coaches in it at that point. I remember doing stuff. The Sun did a preview and Belfast Telegraph and things, and it gives you a wee bit of a reputation then as a coach if you're going and doing well, and the players are getting opportunities, and we had a decent style of play. Like, it's very difficult to play against, remember speaking Southampton, but it's very difficult to play against teams like that. They're training all year for 4 years. That group will be together probably at Southampton from under 9, majority of it, to this was under 15. So it's very, very uneven playing field, but all the counties go on and are competitive, and fair play to all the coaches. It's a great week, and I think everybody who's involved with it always says how great a week it is, and I would recommend it to anybody, any young coach. If you can get involved, because it's you'll have a great experience.
Yeah, Conor, I just want to jump in on the back of what you've just sort of talked about there. Unfortunately, this year the Milk Cup, obviously the Super Cup's not actually happening, and there'll be a lot of disappointed coaches and players out there. But I just want to regress the conversation a little bit, because you've talked about the Queen's Badge and how it sort of developed your communication and leadership skills, but it wasn't directly related to football. And then if you regress a little bit further than that, you go back to Cookstown, where you said, you're put in a position where maybe you felt you weren't quite ready for it, but you took it on anyway.
Yeah.
So I think there's lessons there for coaches in this country in particular, because there may be the fact that they compare themselves to what's going on maybe across the water, or they see these things on YouTube and they listen to these coaches, but may not have the confidence themselves to actually take that next step and go for it. If you're thinking about your story in that context, is there anything that you would sort of promote to the coaches, or even suggest the coaches could do to step outside their comfort zone and try something a little bit different?
Yeah, just to have a go for it attitude, and just not worry about failing, because everybody's going to. Like, I make mistakes all the time in my job. I'm running a professional academy, and it took me a while to find my feet in that. But that's me knowing that probably people I work with would say, "Oh, he's doing well." Hopefully, they would say he's doing a good job. But I know what I'm missing here and there. So it's being aware of what you're missing or what you can improve on, and just having a sort of go for it attitude and willing to take a few bumps along the way. Like I remember like the first day at Cookstown Youth Camp. Honestly, I give everybody out session plans, and like most of them were terrible. Like it's shockingly bad. It's quite a few I copied off other people, and yeah, I hadn't a clue really, to be fair, what I was doing and even how to run it. And I just sort of went with it, and it got through, and everybody joined in and helped me, because it was great, because everybody there wanted me to do it and wanted me to do it well. It was a fundraiser for the club, and there weren't. It was a safe setting for me to make mistakes. It wasn't like I was under pressure, and I was a paid member of staff, and why are you not doing this? Why are you not doing that? Or so I was able to fail and make mistakes in a real safe environment, I guess, and that's probably makes it a lot easier, I would say. Actually, just hadn't thought about that before, but it's a good question. And yeah, having that environment is key, because we talk about like players and having an environment for the players to learn and make mistakes, but it's the same for coaches. Like nobody's perfect, especially when you're coming through and learning and going into more senior roles. You'll definitely make mistakes on managing people and dealing with parents and etc. So yeah, I hadn't actually thought about that before. As a good question.
I think you make a good point too, in terms of, if players, if we're talking about giving players the opportunity to go try things, to be creative and to fail, and let coaches allow that to happen, then there has to be that same environment created by the club to allow the coaches to then go and do that, and allow the coaches, as you say, to try something that might not work, but then also support them through it. Exactly. Rather than being too much pressure on, you've got to win X, Y, and Z. The NIBFA Cup's a massive competition over here, and sometimes I think that the level of competition can sometimes outgrow the level of the player and the team that's actually in front of the coach, if that makes sense. And I think sometimes the focus can be too much that direction, and that might then create the club environment to promote that one team or promote those number of teams that are doing well too much. And that pressure then obviously breaks down those, I think, confidences in coaches and players as well. So I think you make a really good point in that respect, and that the club also then have to try and support that in some way, shape or form.
Even still today, so I started Oldham in February, and Paul Murray came in as the academy manager in like July, August, and he's been great, because he just went, listen, like, see sessions, he goes, just make it up. If it doesn't work, just scrap it up, start again, just go, lads, sorry. And I was like, hey, that's great. Like he's just saying, I'm not expecting everybody to be perfect, and you'll make mistakes. Just try it, and what's the worst that can happen? I was like, because I didn't know, like I knew him a wee bit, but not really well. Now I have a really good relationship with him, which is great. But when you're getting a new boss coming in, and he's saying, oh, you're going to make mistakes. That's fine, as long as you learn from it. Then that's been massive for me this season, and I've been doing this quite a long time now. But I'm still making mistakes without doubt every day, and every session I look at it and go, I could have done that better. But if you're in a senior role, I think that's really important to create that environment,
And just to jump on the back of that, then we are going to make mistakes, whatever level we're at in terms of our coaching.
100%, yeah.
How do we get that across to other coaches when maybe parents are watching or somebody else from the club is watching? How did you go about making mistakes and learning from them? It's probably a better question to ask back then, not necessarily now, but actually back then, if you can reflect on it.
Yeah, well, I tell you who was a massive influence on me, and like I passed my I did my B license in Scotland in 2007, I think, and then I did my A license in 2009 in Belfast, and so I was very, very young passing them, but I wouldn't like 100%. I had no chance of passing my B or my A without being mentored, and that's would be my answer to that. Making mistakes, learning, having somebody overseeing you. Like Paul Key was short of sensational to me. As I said earlier, I came in as a volunteer coach and ended up over a period of years being a paid coach, leading an age group, taking the county. I took over from him as the Milk Cup manager. So like he's been phenomenal to me, and he created that environment and not just with me, as I said, about the other coaches, Boiler and people like that who've went on and doing well for themselves, that we talk regularly about that, how lucky we were to get mentored. Myself and Boiler, like, us, be one of my best mates in football, and that's a big thing. And I guess it probably links a wee bit maybe to what I answered to Gary's bit as well. Creating that environment. Paul created that environment with our coaches, and it's the senior management do that. So hopefully, in my role at Oldham at the minute, I'm creating that where coaches aren't afraid to make mistakes and see me as somebody being able to help them, which I think they do, but some may say different. Who knows? But certainly get the feeling that they want me to help them. And the key for me is that I don't come across that I know everything, because I don't. And if you come across like that and can't build rapport, then you're not going to create that environment. So it goes back to leadership, interpersonal skills, management. Guess it all kind of links to some of the things we spoke about before.
And in terms of just numbers wise, how many are you mentoring at the moment yourself, or how many coaches are you working with yourself at the moment?
It's about 19, 20.
Yeah. I'm sure we'll get to that towards the end in terms of I suppose the processes you're putting into place with those coaches. But just to drift back into your pathway coming through, you were then at Glentoran. How did being at a club like Glentoran impact on you?
I loved it. Really, like, that got me a real thirst for coaching. We had a really, really successful time. Like, the group of lads I coached were brilliant. I think I took a reserve team for 18 months, and in fairness, Spike Hill was a manager and did a really good job managing the group. But in that time, I think we had like 11 got pro contracts. John McGuigan, Callum Burney, Carl McComb, Willie Garrett still playing there. Callum Burney's just left to go to Glenavon, I think, last season. There's a lot of boys who played a lot in the Irish League, and we had a really, really good team. We actually we had lost one game at home in 18 months, and our style of play was fantastic. Like, I really fond memories of that group of Glentoran. They were brilliant. They really were. We won trophies. We got players in the first team, and we brought young players through, like Jordan Stewart came through that, and it was just a really successful time, really enjoyable. The lads wanted to learn. Spike, in fairness, gave me like total control on the coaching, which was brilliant. So I was, again, making mistakes, but trying to put like that was the highest level of players I would say I'd worked with at that point, because and in a main coach role, I've done stuff in Northern Ireland, but I wasn't managing teams at that point. And they were, quite a few of them were under 21 internationals and under 19 internationals and whatnot. So they were really, really good players, and we created a real clear style of play. And then ran the academy was academy director for about 18 months, something like that after that. So it was about 3 years roughly at the Glens, and great times.
And looking back on it, what were some of the strategies and maybe the tools that you were bringing into play to help you in the roles there?
I'll talk about the reserve team first. So reserve team, I just tried to get a couple of real clear principles of play across. How we attacked and how we defended was pretty clear and simple, and the lads flourished in that. The managing of the group and everything else, Spike Hill was in charge of that and did a good job there. So I just concentrated on the coaching. So that was nice, not to be able to focus on that for once and not have to do some of the managing really. So I was able to build that relationship with the lads, and we had some pros down playing with us and stuff at different points. Stephen Carson, I remember playing a couple of games, who a good career and whatnot. So the academy was in a bit of turmoil when I went in there, and that was a real challenge, because as I started, or just before I started, the whole committee resigned, bar two, the guy Kaiser and Nicola Kelly, and we had to basically rebuild off the pitch. and then that was the start of the Glens really coming through strong on the pitch as well. I got recruited some good coaches. Yeah, it was the start of the Glens doing really well, and you know, that golden group of 2004s were probably under 10s or something at that point, so they were dominating at that age group, and we eventually built it into over that period, and then obviously after I left, even more so, built it into the Glens being quite a strong academy like they are now.
And what do you think from maybe your past experiences was helping to build this bigger picture for the Glens, where you were looking more towards the future and how you could help the whole club to thrive, not just a specific age group?
Yeah, so it was very segmented, and it wasn't a club, I would say, or an academy. It was like, that was under 15 team, that was under 10 team, whatever, and even things like there was no connection with the first team. So, and the board had no interest at that point. We got a guy. There was a change in mindset from people. Knew the board at there as well. They took an interest. They started putting money in. It was just a change in culture. I remember doing presentations to the board of, this is who we've got coming through. This is why you need to invest in the academy and stuff. So it was a real team effort of changing the culture in the club and the ethos. And then over the next number of years, they started to bring even more players through. And like, they weren't even all in the National League at that point. We were only one age group. Just shows you get things right off the pitch. It affects it on it. That's key for clubs at all levels, particularly in Northern Ireland. If you're well run off the pitch, then you can reap the rewards on it, because we were able to do more in terms of staff training. I was able to then start recruiting staff because it became more appealing, because there was, at that point, the Glens wasn't well run, and it was in the press for about to go bankrupt and all that sort of stuff. So the initial bit was quite hard, and I guess knowing having a bit of a network in the game at that point in Northern Ireland helped me, to get some people across to them.
And just to unpack a little bit of that, you've talked there about doing a presentation in terms of to the board to try and, I suppose, get them onto your mindset and your way of thinking as to what's possible. And there'll be a number of coaches out there at their various clubs who are maybe, especially at this time, who are reflecting on where the club is at, and maybe thinking, that they want to do something like that for their club, to put a better structure in place. What would your advice be to that person?
Yeah, definitely. Like, to get the job, actually, I had to do an interview, and a presentation was part of it. So, and was the main part of it. It was presentation and then questions to the board. So that was a great experience for one. And then that stuff like that continued after that. So, yeah, getting clubs organised, seeing the potential, because the other side of it is there should be jobs in the back of these professional clubs, Irish League clubs, professional clubs in Northern Ireland. So, that was starting that process off, because they've taken it. David Lowry and Stephen and other people have taken it on further since. But yeah. If you get yourself organised, then you need to be strategic about it too, and assess what you can improve, what you've got to start with, and then get everybody behind you.
So you had a hugely impactful spell at the IFA, but you had a number of roles there. How did those various roles stretch you?
The first one, I'd say, it was County Excellence, working on that. And that program was brilliant. We had the County Excellence head coaches at that point were Pascal Vaudequin, who Kenny Shields left just as I was coming in, but Pascal Vaudequin took over from him. Pascal's out in Vietnam, working at one of the biggest youth setups in the world, probably, or biggest budgets anyway. So Pascal Vaudequin, Christophe Moulin is technical director of the Swiss FA. The level of coaches in there was really good, and that was a great learning ground, because the games were obviously good. It was the best of what we had in Northern Ireland in terms of the counties. At that point, there were lots of inter-county festivals and stuff. So that was my first bit, and then making a good impression on the people that I've just said there was really important, because that got me involved in international football. So Paul was his under-17 manager. Bertnell Thompson, who's the kit man at Ballymena, couldn't go on a trip to Lillishall, and Paul was like, I need somebody to do the kit. Would you do it? I was like, I don't really want to be a kit man, but definitely I'll do anything to be around international football. So I went to, and he's like, well, listen, if you do this for me, I know you can do a few other bits. I'll get you a bit of coaching and, get involved. So I was like, right, great. So I went away, did that. Tommy Wright actually was in the staff at that point, who's just left St Johnson. So yeah, again, working with really good people. And yeah, that was my break into international football. I went as a kit man the first trip, and then went and progressed from there, because I did a good job. Paul let me do a bit of coaching, because we had probably 35 players at that point, because it was the first get together in the road towards the under-17 European Championships, and he had to get it down to 18 to go to Greece the next month and then Euros. So yeah, there was so much to do. So I was just working all day, every day, doing coaching parts of sessions, taking worlds, taking possession practices, taking bits of this, that, and the other, doing some sports science support. They ended up increasing the budget. So Paul went to Nigel Worthington at the time and said, I want Conor in my staff. Because again, I was closer to the lads' ages as well. So that helped from like a welfare point of view. So over my time working for the Northern Ireland teams, some of the, that under-17 age group is tricky, because the boys are just leaving home for the first time, moving to a new club. They're getting influenced, thinking they're players. I remember someone coming with, Louis Vuitton wash bags and all that sort of rubbish. So they're changing as people, thinking they're English a wee bit probably too. Yeah, so they have to remember their roots, and they haven't made it as a player yet and stuff. So that was a big thing for me, and something that, as I said, because I was young, I was able to relate to them, and I was like the bridge between the coaching staff and the players. That progressed to doing sports science as well, and analysis mainly. So Paul was speaking highly to Steve Beaglehole at the time. He was the 19s and 21s manager, and he asked me to then join his staff. So then this was whilst I was at uni. So like my final year at uni, I was basically not there. So I was always away at some international game, which was great. Under 21s with James McLean in it at that point, and Ollie Norwood and Corey Evans, Craig Cathcart, Johnny Flynn, who was playing in the Irish League. Yeah, some great guys. Josh McGuinness, I remember him as well. That's right. So yeah, worked and just progressed to then assistant coach, sort of sports scientist, and then into the analysis, and then did a lot of games as analyst for Robbo and Stephen Craigan, Paul, Michael, a wee bit with senior bits, preparation stuff for them, but mainly then 21s to 17s I was involved with for. I should really write down or look back and count how many European done, but quite a lot. 96 internationals. I wrote down that, and I wrote down every game, the score, and everything. So I've got that somewhere. So there's 96 games along the way, and yeah, that progressed then as well too. And with the 1998 group, so that'll be 6 years ago. Then I went to the under-17 Euros as assistant manager to Robbo, and we qualified at that group with the 98. So Dylan King and Shea Connolly doesn't play anymore, but Shea Gordon, yeah, all those lads. Nathan Gartside, who's from the Northwest, and is at Derry City actually at the minute. He was in I think. Yeah, so that progressed to under 17 assistant manager, and that was whilst running the Club NI program as well. And then did I did 3 years with Frankie with under 18 schoolboys. Michael sent me to scout actually once in Israel, so that was an interesting experience. I had to go watch Israel against Portugal, do a report on Portugal, because we were playing. That was at the weekend. Northern Ireland were playing them on the Tuesday, and that was a great vote of confidence from me, from Michael as well, because he phoned me when the team news came out on before the Israel game. He phoned me to go over, right, this is their team, what do you think? I was like, oh my god, this is just, that was like, actually, I hadn't thought about that until there now, but yeah, that was an amazing experience. And Israel itself. I don't know, have you ever been to Israel? Any of you? So people are just with AK-47s, just sitting at every hotel door. So I was there by myself, walking through Tel Aviv by myself, and yeah, it was an experience. I'll tell you a relatively funny story about the airport. Going through, like, there's security everywhere. So this is important to dress to impress, right? So I'd been at the game, came back to fly home. I was sitting beside Avram Grant at the game, you know. So he was managing Chelsea at this point. And I was like, this is class. So get into the airport. I was obviously shirt and tie, or not tie, but shirt and dress smart, because I was in the director's box. And so, like, the security was unbelievable. It was just, I've never seen anything like it. So the guy in front of me looked like big hairdo, and just he just looked like he was you know, born in Jamaica when he was a white guy. But and so he was in front of me, set his bag down, and it got scanned. And I was like, okay, right. And I lifted the other end. And then I turned, and there was about 300 people over here, just, you know, zigzagging. And he got sent that way, and I went to lift my bag to follow him. And he goes, no, so you go that way. And I was like, oh. So I didn't have to join the queue with everybody else, about 300 people. Honestly, it must have been just because I was dressed smartly. Well, that's what I'm telling myself anyway. You know. So
I think it's fascinating. I think very interesting in terms of the journey you've been on, just purely what you've talked about with the IFA. There's so many experiences in that, and that doesn't even include the stuff you've done before, the stuff you've done after. But one of the points that I'm reading up on anyway is that your trajectory to where you're at now hasn't been straightforward. It hasn't been you going from a coach and staying as a coach the whole way through. There has been avenues where you've fenced off. You talked about sports science. You talked about even going that trip as a kitman just to get the experience. And a lot of that comes back to the ability to network, because, you know, Paul Key was your mentor, and you speak quite highly of him, and you're able to go and impress him. And because of Paul Key's connections, then he was able then to push you forward into other people's remits that you might not have had access to.
Yeah.
So in terms of coaches here in Northern Ireland, or even just any coach that's looking to progress, is there anything that you would sort of give tips or advice on them doing, how they could potentially grow their network or even network themselves, so that they can eventually get themselves into little avenues that might help them along their way?
Yeah, getting out and meeting people. Courses are obviously a big one, but there's a shelf life, and only so many courses you can go to and do. And then just doing a good job and getting around people who are in senior role. Or senior role is probably the wrong word, but people with more experience than you, who you can learn of. And like I say, go back to Paul again. Like, he could easily I could have just been another member of staff to him. But his management style and his leadership style was, he wanted us to do well, all of us. And I showed how enthusiastic I was. Like, I was driving down from Belfast when I was at university to coach for him, not getting paid. So he appreciated stuff like that. I would help him I would go above and beyond in the role to make sure the county excellence programme for Tyrone was as best as it could be. So it wasn't just there clocking in and out, if you like, to take a session. I was being really proactive. So having somebody like that was massive. And then just doing a good job, really. Like, in terms of the networking, watching other coach, you know, there's a lot of good coaches in Northern Ireland, you know, a lot of good coaches. So going somebody at other clubs, like, used to two different clubs, you know, obviously you know each other, but there'll be people at Coleraine could learn off people at the Institute, and, you know, you might know somebody and might, you know, so in terms of networking, you know, if anybody wants to come over to Oldham, they're more than welcome. I'm not saying I'll have bags of time to spend with them, because I'm very busy, but if I can, I will spend time with them. And it's an open door policy. I don't mind people coming in and watching. As well, you need an opportunity, but then you have to be able to deliver as well. So if you're not good enough, you'll soon get found out. Like, it's a with the international thing, Paul started it, but then Steve Bigglehole wanted me involved with him, and then that's, you know, transpired then into Robbo, and it was just people speaking positively about you. So I guess once you get an opportunity, you have to be able to deliver and do the role. And like, I'm extremely hardworking, probably too much. I know a lot of people are like, but I would say I would definitely. I would imagine people would describe me as hardworking and dedicated. So I've went above and beyond to make sure I've done as much as I can in my role, so I can impress people.
Yeah, and I think that you mentioned something there in terms of having the willingness to travel and be unpaid as well as kind of like a sacrifice you've made at that time to say, well, I know actually what benefit this could have on me.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
there may be roles and opportunities that are out there that aren't paid, that maybe they do require a lot of travel and a lot of sacrifice in terms of finances and time for yourself. But you know what? If you've got a plan and you know what you're looking for, these can actually help in many ways.
Yeah, definitely.
And just to unpack it a little bit more as well, these various roles was you stepping out of your comfort zone, you know, so you're talking about going to Israel and the men stood there with guns and things like that, you know, that's a bit more of a high profile example, but there would have been lots of times, maybe when you're starting to talk to the national manager and there might be a little bit of self-doubt there, whether you could do it straight away, but you stepped out your comfort zone, you know, how do you go about creating that within yourself? It's a difficult question, but that you know, almost there is going to be fear there, but you just go and do it. How would you say, you know, how did that kind of come about with you?
I think it was just desire to be successful. Like I was like, "Frick it, I'm just going to do it and see what happens." Like use the Israel one as an example. I was definitely nervous doing that because I was thinking, flip, Michael's putting a lot of trust in me here. And he, to be fair, he sent me what the guy had done previously for Israel, so that helped. And I was like, okay, now I know what he wants and the way he wants it. But I was definitely still going, oh shit, I don't want to miss something here. Like I've never put so much thought into what I was writing, you know. So and going, please be right, and hoping that he would agree with me. So yeah, and to be fair, like I remember doing preparation for, I think it was Malta. I think it was Malta. Anyway, preparation for a game and talking through clips to him and stuff. And he goes, "Did you notice this?" And I was like, "No." And he's like, "Okay, thought you would have." I was like, "Oh shit!" Off goal kicks in whoever it was we were playing at the time, the strategy off goal kicks. And I had never thought of it, to be fair. And I was like, "Oh yeah, so they do." When he showed me it, so yeah, I just had back to what I said at the start, just a go for it attitude, and just thought, "Frig it, you know, what's the worst that can happen? He can tell me no."
And obviously that kind of go for it attitude brings us almost up to date. You're now at Oldham, so how does Oldham even come about? And then we'll start to chat about what you currently, you know, your current role at Oldham. But how did that actually come about?
I decided to leave the IFA in 2016, so I was running the Club NI program at the point and coaching a lot there. Well, Marty McCann, who was on this here, and a lot of good people like that. Decade Devine and Jim, etc., etc. But yeah, so that was good memories as well. And Robbo was the Northern Ireland under 21s manager at the time, and went with the senior team to Euros. And on the back of that, he got tell a lie, he was at Motherwell. It was previously, he was 21s, but he was still with Northern Ireland with the Euros, or 2016 Euros. So he then got his first manager's job on the back of the Euros and at Oldham. And a guy, so I left IFA at the start of the summer. I gave myself a couple of months just to relax, and I was going a couple of trips with teams and just to take the foot off the gas a wee bit before starting. And I said to myself, I was going to, if I didn't get something by the end of the summer, I was going to go abroad. So I set myself, first priority was England, next was like Australia, America, you know, somewhere a bit further afield. So Robbo got the manager's job. The guy as head of analysis left to go to Wigan around September, or leaving around September, October time. And he phoned me and asked me would I come over and have a look and see if I wanted it. So that's how that went, and that's how I got the opportunity. And yeah, again, very thankful for the opportunity I got with him, because I wouldn't. It's very difficult to get into England. Like, it's such a saturated market, Like even though I'm there at the minute, it's still and my network's growing all the time because I'm in there, and like the Premier League put me through a lot of training, like EHOC it's called, which is a fantastic course, and just staff development. So I'm networking with a lot of people at that, but so difficult to forge a career in England. You know, it really is, and you need a shoe in from someone, and I was lucky Robbo did that for me. So I did a season with that. Robbo got sacked unfortunately at Christmas or January, sorry. And I stayed for the rest of the season, and then got a job in the summer then with Double Pass.
That was going to be my next question. You've led me on perfectly, and but let people know what is Double Pass and how does it work?
Yeah, so we go in. Anybody who works in education, Ofsted. So we do that for football basically. So I go in and interview staff, managers, players, coaches, head of coaching, academy managers, directors, every key role. Assess their coaches, assess them in games, and give them feedback on how to get better basically. So I did that in England for a season, and then the last 2 years I've done it in America with MLS. So yeah, it's very good. It's a lot of it's process driven. So how to run an academy, like the world leaders in running academy football and elite player development. How to optimize talent is the tagline. And then to be fair, that's been a major learning experience for me because you don't know what you don't know. And like setting up the Club NI program was me just firing ideas down and just going, I think this would be good. Now I know what good looks like, and what elite looks like. Like some of the stuff I've seen has been brilliant, and the learning I've got from that has been great because. And especially in North America, actually, has been really good. You know, some of the MLS clubs and amateur clubs at USS they're really far ahead in a lot of things. Like the French FA take a coach from every MLS club every year and do coach education with them. They do like a elite youth license, and I feel like I've done the course because they all copy it. You know, it's unbelievable. I was like, oh wow, I've never seen all this stuff before. So in terms of podcasts, actually, Gary Kernin's got the Modern Soccer Coach. If you go on, Chris Little from Seattle Sounders is very good. He was a very impressive coach, and his is on Gary's website. You can download it. I watched it myself last week, and yeah, he talks through the principles of play and all this sort of stuff. So yes, Seattle was one of many good clubs I went to.
And you mentioned way back about, I suppose, stealing or adopting, as I've been told to call it, other ideas. For us over here, what ideas could we take from your learnings at Double Pass and at Oldham that we could filter down into our teams or into our clubs?
I'm sure the level, like every country, will be varied. So what goes on at Coleraine Institute compared to Warren Point and Dungannon could be totally different, or it could be the same. I don't know. Double Pass is very process driven of how you should, like coaching curriculums, how you should deliver it, how you should run your club. Yeah, I couldn't really say one thing in particular. Like I'm sure everybody's got a style of play, and everybody's got, you know, how to integrate multidisciplinary teams to a certain degree. Maybe not many in Northern Ireland, because I wouldn't have thought at academy level. Maybe there is now. I don't know. I haven't been here in a few years, but you know. How you introduce strength and conditioning, maybe there is a lot. You could tell me better, but yeah, how it's integration management processes, and then obviously ideas. It's all based on ideas and philosophies. So if you've got that, and I've seen a lot of good stuff from clubs in Northern Ireland as well. People talking and stuff like this. So I'd imagine there is quite a lot of good stuff going on.
And a Double Pass, are they quite rigid in what they want you to see at those in the different countries, the different clubs, or is there almost a framework and a set of principles that they would rather see?
Yeah, 100%. So it's very process driven, and it's very binary as well. So I go in and I make an assessment if it's yes or no, do they have it or not. And like, say, I'll give you a simple example. So coaching philosophy, now being very general here because there's many different layers to that, but do you have a coaching philosophy, yes or no? They'd submit documents of this is what their coaching philosophy is, right? And I would say yes or no to different criteria. Then I would interview you as academy director, you guys, director of coaching. Nathan, you're just going to be what job do you want? You can be the under 16s coach, right? So I'll interview you all separately, Nathan, you with all the other coaches, and you have to talk me through it. I'll judge your level of understanding. So if you didn't have a philosophy, but you're able to talk about it, so you didn't have it documented, you would get like an informal yes. But if you had it documented and were able to talk about it, it'd be a hell yeah. And if it was you had documented but couldn't talk about it, it'd be like documented but don't understand it. So that goes through, that sort of process goes through everything, every line of the strategy of the club, the sports science setup, the talent ID, yeah, everything, and obviously mainly football based. So like coaching philosophy.
And if you could go back to a younger Conor Marlin that's in charge of the Glentoran Academy, would you pass yourself?
No. Yeah. You don't. The thing is, you don't know what you don't know. So, I've just had my eyes open to so many things the last few years. I think everybody probably has as well with the internet. You know, that's definitely helped sharing information and knowledge. But getting behind the scenes and speaking to people and talking to, like when you go to the club, you talk to the first team manager. So Nigel Clough's one that springs to mind. So I did Burton Albion's in England, and he was brilliant. Like just listening to him talk about youth development and playing and tactics and stuff. Like some of the managers just, because you're maybe interviewing them the Friday, they're telling you what their tactics are on the Saturday, you know, and so I was like, oh, well, that's very interesting. I hadn't thought of that, you know. Yeah, so yeah, you don't know what you don't know, and I'm learning all the time, and always wanting to get better, like everybody.
And you also have a link in with Vio. I know I've been in touch myself because I'm very keen to try and maximize potential of improving players. How did that role come about?
Yeah, so the 2018, I think it was summer 2018, I saw the guy I work with showed me this online, and I was like, oh, that looks good there. And it wasn't out at this point, so I sent him an email and was like, what's your plans? Any roles coming up? Because I was working for, I just started with Double Pass, so I don't work full time. Like it's a full time contract, but it's not full time hours. It is salary, but it's not hours. So you've plenty of free time. So I was like looking at something extra to do. So they flew to London, and I went down to London and met them, did an interview, and then started doing some work for them because I just looked at it and thought, that's really class. Like how clever is that? Taking away the cameraman, because I'd previously just finished working at Oldham, so I was looking at it and going, I just hate going like this. You know, it's boring. And sometimes you miss things, or like I forget the memory card isn't full or half time. I'm like, oh shit, you know, changing memory cards, reformatting and stuff. So I got myself into many tricky situations, to be honest, but you always find a way to get out of them. So yeah, it's just a great product, and I thought, well, that'll give me something extra to do because I like to be busy, and I wanted to do that, and then it's just grown as a company. It's massive. We're selling all across the world, and the online platform is brilliant, you know, and it's very affordable too, because you can be the cameraman. You can go in, flick left, flick right. You know, your keeper's too deep. You tell them things. So usually you can't see. You can only see what the camera sees. You know, send them clips to basically like a player cam feature on it now. Draw. It's just as IT is evolving, and it's now a necessity for coaches and players. You know, kids want to see themselves and want to learn, and it's a massive part of their development and their learning. You can tell them to you're blue in the face of this, you should have been here, but if you show them that picture of actually, if you take 2 steps back this way, you're changing that, now we're out the other side. But they won't, you know, people learn differently, and showing them is just massive for their learning. So the other benefit is, we talked about networking before. I just phone people and say, do you want to buy a camera? Obviously, a little more effort to it than that. Like, but I don't want to be known as a salesman, to be fair, but it's it's just been good for connecting to people and an excuse to phone people and keep busy. So yeah.
And this fantastic journey that you've been on, you know, with the many different roles and the many different experiences, tell us now how that's all culminated to your current role.
I think it's been a real benefit because I've done a wee bit of everything. It could be maybe jack of all trades, master of none. Eventually, that is the risk, but I try to think of it positively, as in hopefully eventually master of one, with a decent knowledge of them all. So running effectively a football department, you know, being able to relate to and speak to sports science people, know if they're talking rubbish or, you know, how busy they actually are, for example, is good. And then, you know, football, the higher you go, is more multidisciplinary. So that approach and be able to hold conversations with people in different areas is really important. I keep getting pushed into management positions, my next move will probably not be a management move. I hope, in a way, because I do love it. Like, I do love it, and I like being a decision maker. But I'd like to just concentrate on coaching for a bit. So whenever that is, I don't know. But you know, just concentrating on improving myself as a coach, because I'm improving everybody else. But and that is improving me. But I want to focus on myself for a while, because they're different roles. You know, coaching coaches and coaching players, both good. Like, but coaching players is the best.
I've got one just in terms of, you know, you talk about the differentiation between coaching coaches and coaching players. And you've obviously, your career has been that varied in that you've had that on-field experience where you've been coaching. You've also had the off-field stuff where you've been directing and you've been sort of leadership qualities. But a lot of what you've talked about, and I've noted it down, I think you've mentioned man management about 5 times. And that tells me that you've had a focus on that throughout the career. There's been roles in which have had that focus and you've had to learn that. In terms of a purely coaching perspective, what would you kind of say the skills to man management would be?
Coaching players, you're talking about there?
Yeah.
Okay. The biggest thing is, so like I do mentoring for the English FA, and the biggest thing is the rapport. All the staff training you get is about rapport. So being able to connect with the players. I think kids have changed and society obviously has as well, but the way you interact with them is totally different than it would have been 10, 20 years ago. So it's more, you have to get to their level rather than the coach and the player. It's more, you know, that now. So yeah, building rapport is, and that's useful in any role, coaching coaches or coaching players, because I can't be a good coach educator if I don't have a rapport, because they'll not listen to be a good one, Conor. Whereas if I've got a relationship with James, I'll tell James, yeah, you know, have you thought about this? And he'll go, oh, okay, because he doesn't think I'm a dick. But if he thinks I'm a dick, then I've got a problem, because he'll just go, I good one, and not do it. So, and it's the exact same thing with players. You know, some players obviously they're on a journey and they're working towards achieving their dream. So they're maybe thinking they're better than they are, but they won't get there without the help of good coaching, because they need mentored. And it's just a different form of doing that, I would say.
Yeah. And just to try and encapsulate the whole thing, I have a few notes down here in terms of what you spoke about specifically coaching players. And, you know, you talked about having a club-wise, having a clear principle of how you want to move forward, how you want to play, and a coach having those clear principles so that you can impart them. You know, you talked about Glentoran having those clear principles for the players and allow them to go and play and express themselves. But then what I find also interesting is, as James and you both alluded to earlier on, was you can watch other coaches, but you can't just take their session and pop it in your session.
Yeah, correct.
You have to be able to adapt that somehow. So that's maybe a skill set that coaches might want to be able to look for as well.
100%. I think as I've evolved, that's been the biggest thing. That the last couple of years has been fantastic for me. The stepping away, and I didn't do much coaching for a year, because when I was working in England, because I wasn't allowed to coach in England. So I didn't do any, and that reflecting and watching others was brilliant. And then, excuse me, the deeper understanding of the game through dealing with more high level and professional people has been great. And now I wouldn't really look up sessions, to be honest. Very rarely. I just make them up. Like I coach a youth team every day, and I just go, right, what do they need, and then I design a practice around it. And I use, like with our coaching curriculum at Oldham, it's been quite innovative. And I'm doing my MBA project on it, and it's looking at different methodologies for different things, and yeah, I'm just learning more about the science of it. And I think coaches, that YouTube and watching Pep do it that's not going to get you to improve as a coach, because you have to know the why. Like the players have to know the why of how they're getting better or why they're getting better, because this coaches have to know why you're doing that practice. So that's the biggest thing for me.
I'm looking at James right now, and yeah. James is smiling back at me too. James, you want to continue?
Yeah, well, we're very big believers in the why. It often comes up in our conversation. And just to relate it back, you're talking about different methodologies there.
Yeah.
Which methodologies would you say have helped players to understand your why? In maybe in a certain scenario or in a certain context is a better way of putting it.
Yeah. So I would say the best course I have done is the English FA, the Youth Award, and then Advanced Youth Award. So that is very much constraints-led approach. So that's sort of been the flavour of the month for me the last while. How do I introduce that to coaches, and how to introduce that to the players at Oldham, and yeah, so that's a big one. That's a big one at the minute, and the more I'm doing reading, using this time actually for a lot of reading, but the more reading I'm doing, the more you see that that's a really effective way, because just a games-based approach. Not to give away all my MBA work, but it's basically a games-based approach using different methodologies to get that across, and constraints being one. Whole part whole is a very, very good one as well, and the players like it. So if you get them doing stuff that they like, there's going to be more learning taken on board, and it's interesting. So the AYA does a block on each corner, the 4 corners. So some of the stuff around the social and the psych has been really interesting. Tac is okay, like it's fine, sort of a lot of similar, across the board, A license tactical stuff. But the biggest learnings I've had has been on the social and psychological sections of it, because I think that's the future of coach development as well. That's where the game's going. The mental side, the more I'm into it and heavily involved, is the tactical is good, but if the brain ain't working properly, then you're only going to go so much. And a lot of the research is showing the importance of fun. So how you can make sessions competitive and fun. You get people are more engaged, they're more learning, and there's a lot of science around that. So making sure your sessions have got that is important.
I'm probably overly obsessive towards the constraints-based approach and the games-based approach as well, and utilising computer game mechanics Amy Price have come up with. So I'm going to take this chance now to geek out a little bit, but and I've always wondered, because I've only ever used it up to say like under 18 level.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that constraints-led approach could really filter into adult level, a professional coaching? I suppose what I see is there was an example Frank Lampard gave the other day about a passing pattern and how he never enjoyed it as a player, and he doesn't really think his players enjoy it, but it almost gets success for them. Whereas my thinking is, well, could you create a constraints-led game that would do exactly the same thing? And as you mentioned, it would be a lot more fun. Is there an opportunity for that at such a high level? Because then obviously it will filter down then to grassroots.
Yeah, I think it's like your diet. It needs to be balanced to get the best results. At that level, you're looking at load. So if everything is just a small-sided game or a version of it, constraints-based, different. If it's that, it'll be too intense. So their bodies just won't be able to cope with basically playing a game all day, every day. So taking 15 minutes to do a pattern getting those points, and then putting it. Everything will be games based, but there will be technical, and you have to remember, you have to learn technique as well. Like, people talk about decision making, right? But it's all good me saying I want to get the ball from here to here, but if I can get the technique to do that, it doesn't matter if I want to. So you have to have to have it in a point where you actually do deliberate practice, I think, and maybe even isolated practice, and you build it. It's a bit like the cover, you unopposed ball mastery and opposed, that type of thing. Principles, I think, need to be done. If you're looking at non-professional, I would say constraints-based approach would be all day long, and you'll not be able to overload the players with it, because at the end of the day, especially young kids, and well, actually adults as well, they just want to play the game. So if you're training twice a week or 3 times a week, you don't really need to worry about load. If it's an hour session or an hour and a half, whereas they're at Chelsea, they're training, maybe 4 sessions on the grass and 3 in the gym, and they're trying to peak for the Saturday, and it's real high level detail and planning. So that's a different world. So in our world, I think, constraints based, you can't go too far wrong with that.
I've made one sort of observation the whole way through, and it kind of came to naturally end that conversation. But for me, throughout the career, you can correct me if I'm wrong, 2 of the big points I've put down here is sort of seeing challenge as an opportunity. So rather than you looking at something and saying, oh, I'm not actually good enough to do that, or I don't know him, or I don't want to go there, like you said in Israel, for example. But you've seen that as an opportunity. It might have been a challenge for you at the time, but it was an opportunity that was going to sort of get you to the next level, or at least push you towards it. And also no fear of failure, or at least an understanding that failure can have a learning opportunity out of it. And it's been able to repackage that. So for me, in terms of the whole conversation, those are the 2 points I've taken out in terms of what I can take as a coach, and I can drive myself forward. If you had sort of one last sort of parting message, I suppose, about looking back in your career to date and what advice that could potentially give to coaches, what do you think that would be?
Links a wee bit to what you said there. Just mentality. It's like a player. Your mentality creates a career for a player. Ability gets you in the door, but mentality gets a career, I tell our lads. Because if your mentality and attitude isn't there, then you'll be out of the game at early 20s best. So similar for a coach, mentality to an attitude to learn and to put yourself out there. It's a saturated market, so how are you going to make yourself different? How you unique, and that's really, really difficult, that part. So getting those experiences and trying to watch top people work is invaluable for your learning.